Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Akash Weekly Twitter Spaces. I'm Nadia Bajuelo, Community Events Manager here at Overclock Labs. I hope everyone here now and listening or watching later is having a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever it is you guys are joining us from. As always, thank you guys, the amazing Akash community, for your support and amazing work. This week, I'm seeing the memes and excitement around Mainnet 4 and other upcoming features starting to build. I also woke up to a fresh new guide from Insider Democus. The insiders and community members at large are keeping the guides and Akash explainer threads coming. Thank you guys so much. Keep deploying, keep spreading the word about Akash. With that, let's get started with today's spaces. Greg will kick us off with updates. After updates, we'll give you guys a full introduction to our very special guest today, Lourdes Miranda, currently Chief Compliance Officer at Send Crypto and former CIA officer and FBI analyst, as well as Alani Bankhead, career special agent with the U.S. Air Force and professional coach and consultant. During our guest segment, we'll be talking to Lourdes and Alani about the ever-shifting regulatory environment in Web3 and crypto, specifically looking at how leadership teams can establish governance frameworks to position for potential regulatory changes and how to remain compliant in a new and rapidly changing industry. We'll then wrap up with an AMA with Greg and our guests. We'll give you guys a proper introduction and we'll welcome Lourdes and Alani just after updates. But for right now, let's hand it off to the man of the hour and CEO of Overclock Labs, Greg Osuri. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Really good to be back for another Spaces. I love these Spaces. This is our fifth month of doing it, and I'm so glad we are able to do this every week with amazing Nadia here. And I mean, really, these are the opportunities that we get to, reflect on our week at Akash, as well as be accountable updates, right? So I think it's a really, really good way. It also gives me an opportunity even to talk to my own team members where I haven't probably spoken to them all week, right? I love these updates. These are, we love to do them as much as we can, especially during times of uncertainty with everything. So, with that, I think our biggest, a lot of our work has been in getting mainnet. Super excited. I'm very, very excited for IP leases. Like, if you think about the broader picture, right? It's we are currently on the phase 2 of the master plan, for lack of a better word. So our first phase was to establish security. We launched the blockchain in 2020. We established security in the first 6 months with the token liquidity and whatnot. And we launched the phase 2, which is a platform in 2021, March of 2021. That's really when we started, offering the value of Akash as we detailed out in our white paper. And boy, it's been quite the journey in the last 1 year. You've seen the kind of adoption that we had. We've seen the kind of use cases that we haven't really thought about in the original white paper to come to fruition. We've seen enormous, and the reason for that is as we keep adding features, we began with a very ephemeral platform where you weren't really able to do anything that has heavy data requirements, right? Even with limited functionality, people understood the nature of Akash Network, the first decentralized cloud that's viable to run an application. So people were able to deploy several workloads even with limited functionality. And then we added storage with Mainnet 3. Storage gave us quite a lot of capability in terms of being able to host large data sets. Right? So now you can do nodes, you can do large databases, you can do all sorts of things. And when you restart your workloads, you don't have to bootstrap your data set. So that opened up the platform to a lot more use cases. And now we're adding IP services, IP leases, essentially that allows discoverability, right? So storage last, now we have discovery, and likewise, it's going to open up several new use cases. First thing, top of my head would be node hosting for static ports, right? Things like Solana, things like Bitcoins, things like Handshake. and several other node clients that require a fixed port for discovery. You can finally have Akash deliver. So Akash will slowly starting to get into this something called parity with the public cloud, right? So that's phase two is all about getting to functionality that is indistinguishable from a public cloud. And we still got a lot of work to do. So our next phase is going, the next mainnet's focus is going to be high performance computing. So that means we'll be coming out with GPUs. As you can see, the GPU drums are rolling. We're seeing a lot of excitement. We're seeing several use cases. Our goal is to launch a prototype or get it out by end of the year at least to so that you can start playing around so that we can start onboarding customers to ensure that we got the interfaces right, we got the requirements right, because GPUs are vast. I mean, there's so many use cases that if you start laying down every little corner case, you'll end up just in a spec that is very, very, very complex to use, right? So the challenge again is how do you build a common interface that can work on any data center with any type of GPU? This is something people haven't. This is something that was impossible, right? People haven't built anything close to this. We know for sure because Kubernetes support for GPUs is so minimal that we had to end up doing a lot of work to and contribute upstream in order for that to work, right? Just basic GPUs to work on Kubernetes. So it is groundbreaking. It is pioneering work, but the potential outcome of a globally distributed GPU clusters is just cost reduction to a massive level and repurposing existing hardware instead of trying to go build new hardware with the supply chains shortages, with the way the world is looking. I think if we don't look inwards, we don't try to reuse what we have and try to acquire new resources, I think it's going to be a failing endeavor. So GPUs allows us to tap into this massive deployed capital and resources like gaming machines to powerful workstations like Fuel Labs workstations to data center compute that has enormous amount of GPUs. I mean, with Ethereum mining and a lot of the proof of work mining, there was enormous infrastructure that you know that was built for this mining use case that's all like underutilized right now. So the GPU market will allow us to untap this and another big feature we'll need is the private networking, cross-cluster private networking. With that, we'll have full parity with the cloud. So, and by then we expect at least a good 1,000 providers. And so far we have 7 different protocol clients. Maybe we'll expect another 50 protocol clients. And then the phase three is really superiority, right? So that's when we'll start seeing much better use cases that are not possible in the cloud. So during this journey, it's very, very hard very, very important for us to stay focused on getting to parity with the current cloud. And IP leases is one key milestone. Mainnet 4 is a key milestone in that journey. So I'm super, super excited. Along with IP services, we're also getting interchain accounts, which is a feature I've been wanting for so long. Interchain accounts uh, really opens up a new phase of interoperability, I would say, wherein you can have any IBC chain, call a method on Akash using the native account, right? So a Juno account can now own deployments directly on Akash. That means a smart contract running on Juno or a smart contract running on Osmosis or a Celestia could actually own the deployment on Akash. The implications of that is beyond anything we have seen. Nothing like this exists in Web3, right? Ethereum doesn't have anything close to it because, I mean, let's be honest, you can't really run a viable cloud on Ethereum while paying $70 every time you deploy, right? So the Cosmos delivers the anti-fat protocol thesis, and the outcome is such amazing innovation that happens, right? So cross pollination of communities, usage of, I mean, like, you can now have one single account and be able to call other networks using that account and own all your asset in a single account that simplifies identity management, that simplifies user experience, that is much better for security and just beyond. I'm super excited for Interchain Accounts, and I think what Akash is delivering is a unique use case. Akash and Juno and others are going to see a new phase of interoperability. So I'm really excited. We are very close now. I think the next big step is to for us to put a proposal on the to for an upgrade, and there's a text proposal to ensure everybody's ready from a validator set, and then the main proposal for the upgrade is going to happen. We should see that coming up very soon. And we saw quite a lot of adoption. Space Catch is a new NFT game, augmented reality game, hosting on Akash and Secret Network. I think this is really cool. Cool trend Secret and Akash kind of like came into with the DoD hackathon we saw recently, where a bunch of Marine officers and airmen and guardians they deployed Akash and Secret Network to encrypt cross team communications and using Akash for sovereignty within DoD. So that started a trend of Akash and Secret. So we're seeing quite a lot of projects now, especially games deployed using Secret Network and Akash. GeekPix NFT is another application. There's a AMA happening, I believe, on a, I believe, sorry, that happened yesterday. So if you want to catch up on the Twitter Spaces, go check out we posted a big update. Go check out our update, and you'll be able to listen to the Twitter Spaces. And next week we'll have all three you know. Akash Weekly, we'll have all three moderates talk about this DoD hackathon as well. So please make sure to tune in. Altri, for those of you who don't know, is the Maltri. My apologies. Maltri is the Akash auditor. That is managed by Anthony Rosa. Anthony was a former Marine officer that was involved in the hackathon and the DoD Bravo One hackathon. So it'll be really cool to hear from him about the details. I'm super excited for next week. And our favorite Demokos has been on a serial deployment. He deployed Hyperchain with Speron. So Speron is starting to become like this amazing way to deploy in Akash. So far, we have CloudMos, which is really non-custodial deployment experience. Speron is another amazing deployment experience. Speron obviously takes a little different angle than CloudMos. CloudMos is fully non-custodial. Speron enables you to use Polygon-matic tokens to pay for deployments. And this is, again, a beautiful thing about Cash, how the ecosystem is getting to be more diverse. You're having different clients developed on Akash that have different focus. And as long as we have this organic development with different market focus, with user focus coming on Akash, we're going to be successful because the kind of we the beauty about Web3 and crypto is not about a single company trying and putting the efforts. It's about a community coming together and coordinating together by targeting different parts of the industry, right? So we see CloudMoss focusing on pure non-custodial experience, Peron focusing on a different use case, or and then we have Third Wave focusing on different others, and Fleek and whatnot and the more we have these different ecosystem partners focusing on different areas to attract users, the more successful we're going to get. So we're going to be, as a core team, Overclock Labs is going to be hyper focused on building this community of developers that can actually build different abstractions on top of Akash. So really, really cool to see a lot of deployments happening on Speron now. Demokas did a beautiful guide on how to do that. Go check out in our weekly update thread if you want more information. And we're seeing quite a lot of community threads on Akash, right? So, I mean, Akash is a relatively unknown project. I mean, we've been hyper focused on building and delivering, and we all know that. We do this weekly Twitter Spaces as a way to consolidate our updates and give it to you. But it's really good to see community members, spread the word, right? So I want to shout out Elemental Crypto, did a beautiful thread, and I think the if you actually look at why this thread came about, if you click on the Twitter blog post and click on the quoted tweets, it's because Sam Padilla, who happens to work at Google was excited. He talked about his excitement about Akash and Secret Network on his Twitter thread, and Elemental, found out about Akash from a Google employee Twitter thread, and wrote about Akash, which is amazing to see, right? If you look at the trail as to how that happened. So it's good to see and talk about Google. I mean, what a wonderful news, right? They announced that they're going to accept crypto, right? So it's amazing to see other cloud providers actually, come in the way of Web3. And Akash definitely started the trend and taking a lead in, but it's really good to welcome likes of Google. And it takes a lot for a company like Google to accept crypto, right? So that opens up great opportunities for us as an industry, for Akash as a protocol, and I think there are good things that's just going to come out of this, like amazing announcements that happened yesterday. Google did, and a few other. I believe there's a bank that did it. Well, I'm not a banker. I don't keep track of bankers, but I think the bank also said they're going to do some custody stuff. Really excited for Google, especially Google Cloud, coming into the Web3 era of first starting to accept payments first, and then who knows what might come out of it. But yes, Elemental Crypto is a tweet thread that came out of a conversation from Google Cloud folks, and good to see that level of interest and collaboration in the arena. And second thread we saw by Theory FX, also a beautiful thread. They talk about, different, takes a different viewpoint. Go check it out. It's in our Akash update thread. And Anil, our head of product, today, we released a video that he presented, a video of the talk he did at Masari Mainnet with the demo of Overclock Console. So, Overclock Console is a product from Overclock Labs that we are sort of like, uh, you know, uh, it's a vertical product that enables node RPC deployment and node deployment in a decentralized and non-custodial way. So again, it's another protocol client on top of Akash that Overclock Labs teams feels like in order for you to deploy complex applications with complex topologies, there needs to be another level of abstraction on top. So we've written a console as is another abstraction on top of Akash network to enable node hosting. So Anil gives us a beautiful demo. Go check it out. Overclock console is also going to be GA very soon. So our team has been extremely busy with Mainnet 4 and Overclock console. Can't wait to get it out in your hands to start experimenting with console. It works with Kepler. It's a web-based tool. I think people are going to enjoy it. He gives a demo. Go check it out. It's in a weekly Twitter thread. And he also talks about Anil's been quite the force. Wrote this beautiful thread about embarrassingly parallel workloads and why the importance of GPUs in the sense general purpose GPUs, right? That's what Akash offers really. It's not a special purpose GPU platform, but general purpose GPUs called GPGPUs, a category of GPUs. GPUs delivered. It talks about in detail as to what this industry term called embarrassingly parallel means, and how Akash will be the only marketplace that can offer this embarrassingly parallel GP GPUs for a cloud provider, right? So in an open setting. Beautiful thread. This is the third thread about Akash. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap up our weekly updates. It's been such a wonderful week. I can't wait for Mainnet 4 to come out, and can't wait for all the amazing workload that's going to go on it. So see you next week.
Thanks, Greg. All right, guys. Well, today's episode is a very special one that's been in the works. We've worked hard to bring it to you for quite some time now. And thank you to Alani Bankhead for helping to connect us to today's two expert guests. The regulatory environment is always changing, and we thought it would be great to hear some thoughts and insight from experts in the matter. Also, thank you to Zach for his help in putting today's episode together. Thank you, Alani and Zach. With that, our first guest today is Lourdes Miranda, Chief Compliance Officer at Send Crypto. Lourdes Miranda is a former CIA officer and a former FBI analyst with over 20 years of government and corporate experience, specializing in financial crime investigations and intelligence collection and analysis globally. She has extensive field experience targeting money launderers and terrorist financiers. Since 2017, she has been working with fintechs as a senior crypto investigator, senior compliance officer, and as a risk manager building compliance, investigations, crypto, and intelligence teams and training programs. Lourdes is also an author and has contributed to Manchester CF's crypto assets and open source intelligence online courses as a subject matter expert. Lourdes is also a certified anti-money laundering specialist, certified crypto forensic investigator, certified fraud examiner, certified chain analysis KYT, CipherTrace certified examiner, and Manchester CF financial intelligence specialist. Welcome, Lourdes. We're so excited to have you. How are you today?
Thank you, Nadia, for that lovely introduction. I'm happy to be here. Greg, Alani K, and Alani B, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here and speaking with all of you. And Greg, wow, I'm quite impressed with Akash's updates. I appreciate that. I'll make sure my team at Send Crypto will be following you on your progress, as well as maybe one day we can partner, collaborate, and eventually intersect in this global world of crypto. So, where would you like me to begin? Intersecting?
Well, I am going to go ahead and also introduce Alani Bankhead.
Oh,
and
okay.
then I've got some questions for you guys, as you know, and we'll just go through one by one. And we would love to hear both you and Alani's thoughts, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadia.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. So today we're also welcoming guest Alani Bankhead, Lieutenant Colonel and Agent in the Air Force Reserves and professional coach and consultant. Alani Bankhead is a career special agent and professional coach, consultant, and public speaker. With a career spanning almost 2 decades in federal and state government, Alani has hunted terrorists and spies both in and out of the Middle East on behalf of special operations. She was a senior bodyguard to a top Pentagon official and ultimately found her passion in protecting the most vulnerable, our children, from sexual exploitation. Alani started the Air Force's Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC, task force mission almost 15 years ago in Japan. And since leaving active duty, she has overseen law enforcement investigations, operations, and host national law enforcement training in Latin America and the U.S.'s largest anti-slavery nonprofit focusing on the commercial sexual exploitation of children, CSEC, also known as child sexual trafficking. Alani eventually transitioned to Hawaii, where she created and led the largest anti-child exploitation cyber operations in the Pacific, comprised of federal, state, local, and military law enforcement agencies, resulting in the arrest of almost 100 child sex abusers, the identification and recovery of over 35 live child victims, and a 96% conviction or plea rate. Still serving as a lieutenant colonel and agent in the Air Force Reserves, Alani currently works as a coach and consultant to enable larger groups of law enforcement and prosecutors to be equipped to handle the growing issue of child exploitation online. Alani has given dozens of conference presentations and talks, including a TEDx talk. Welcome, Alani. So excited to have you as well. How are you today?
Hello, Nadia. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you guys. And thank you, Greg, for all that incredible information earlier. It's lovely to be here at Akash chatting with you guys today. Alani Q, of course. Alani, my other brother from another mother. I have to give you a special shout out. And of course, it's always an honor to get to collaborate with Lourdes. She's an incredible advocate on the compliance side of things. And I'm just really excited to have this talk. So thank you for having me.
All right. Yeah, we're so excited. So let's jump right into it with our first question for you guys. Where do you see the intersection of compliance and regulation the crypto industry, and decentralization. Lourdes, let's start with your thoughts, and then Alani, go ahead and jump in with yours.
Thank you, Nadia. Well, the last few years, I've seen the intersection and partnering, if I can use that term, shared global jurisdiction when it comes to conducting KYC and KYB. KYC, for those in the audience, know your customer, KYB, know your business due diligence. There's another KYC I always love to mention because we have amazing investigator, Alani B, on the line. Know your criminal. That's another KYC we also need to discuss. So yeah, shared globalization when conducting KYC, KYB, requesting information, sharing intelligence, conducting investigations, even sharing rules and regulations, because, we're global, so we have to understand where our entity is operating. For example, like in Europe or in Africa, we have to understand the rules and regulations in Africa. So it's definitely global, as well as technology. We collaborate globally with tech companies to ensure that our API platforms are compatible. So to ensure that our KYC, KYB program is strong. So, I can keep continuing. If Alani B, you want to jump in. Another thing I like to mention that rules and regulations, like the FATF travel rule. For those in the audience who are not familiar with FATF, that's the Financial Action Task Force that provide regulations and recommendations for globally for everyone in the U.S., you name it, Europe, Asia, Middle East, all the continents, of course, except Antarctica. So yeah, global jurisdiction is what I see the intersection of all compliance, regulations, investigations.
Thanks, Lourdes. Alani B, what about your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually want to start really strategically big picture to kind of explain to you guys what we're seeing on the law enforcement side. So especially for about the last 5 or 6 years or so, there's been just this really massive conflict between technology and law enforcement. And I'm only going to address protecting the most vulnerable. Like, I can certainly talk about law enforcement terms in general, right? Like drugs, terrorism, like drugs are bad, okay, whatever. It's like this morally nebulous area. But I think everybody can agree that child exploitation is a no-no, right? Unfortunately, what's been happening a lot is tech has really been kind of putting this concept out there of privacy being tops. And for us, as a law enforcement officer, I'll tell you, I believe in America. Capitalism reigns. I love that this is one of the only countries in the world where you can come here with zero or even debt and still make your millions or billions. We are the land of opportunity, and crypto is absolutely, it's not even the next phase of that. It's the current phase of that evolution, right? And so I want you to know that we're not out as law enforcement trying to bust people just to like get our jollies or anything. Like, we're busy, and in fact, we're really overwhelmed, especially during COVID with the explosion of child sex abuse material distribution on the internet. And so I'm going to call it CSAM, but child sex abuse material is the correct term for child pornography. And so with law enforcement, again, believing in privacy, right? The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution prevents me from searching and seizing anything illegally. I have to prove to a judge that I believe that the evidence I'm seeking is going to be in your possession in order to get that search warrant. I take that really seriously. We as a community take that really, really seriously. And so, this is not us versus you, but at the end of the day, the issue that we're butting up against is because of privacy and end-to-end encryption and pseudo-anonymity, that a lot of times companies are intentionally or unintentionally building mechanisms where law enforcement can't access the material that we need, right? And so there have been a lot of conversations at the headquarters, Department of Justice level, and the Internet Crimes Against Children task forces about what does it look like for us to be able to intersect with technology and make sure that we are having access to the evidence that we need to make sure that kids aren't being exploited. And so as far as the scope of the problem on the investigative side, so the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is the big repository for technology-facilitated leads of child sex crimes. And they've received 82 million reports of child sex abuse material and have reviewed 322 million images. It's estimated that 1 in 4 girls is sexually abused and something like 1 in 7 to 10 boys. And according to a Europol report from 2020, virtual assets actually became the second most commonly accepted payment method after credit cards and debit cards being the first. And that is data taken from 40 platforms in the online commercial sex market facilitating sex trafficking. So like crypto plays a really, really big part in us being able to tackle this issue head on. Now, clearly there's a difference between investigations and compliance. So I can talk all day about what we're seeing on the investigation side. Lourdes is your compliance expert and she's amazing at that. But it is a problem. And so I'm just really grateful that we get to have this conversation today to figure out, how do the companies want to address the issue so that you can be a part in preventing the abuse of children? Because I'm going to point out a really sad fact, but looking at the number of people on this call, based on the statistics that I gave you, there are a number of people on here that have been abused, right? And so what would it look like for us to stop that so that, children can grow up and just be children and have, really well-functioning lives and careers and whatnot? And so really important topic today.
Thank you,
No,
guys.
Alani,
Great.
Sorry, go on, Lourdes. I have some.
Oh, no, Alani B, thank you for that. Yes, you're right. As with compliance, I've seen an increase in collaboration with investigators like yourself, Alani. I make sure that I come from a long investigative background, and I've only been in compliance for about 5 years. And I always make sure my compliance officers understand investigations. I even invited Alani B to speak one day during one of our town hall meetings because I want them to understand how important investigation is and understanding what tradecraft is. Alani B mentioned tradecraft to me, and I know that term quite well, being from the intelligence community. And compliance investigations, they may be different, but they also overlap. Compliance is proactive, investigations is reactive. So we need people with Alani's strong background to teach compliance officers how to think like a bad actor, how to act like a bad actor, what buzzwords to look for when we're conducting transaction monitoring. So yes, and Alani also mentioned technology. Yes, we as compliance people, as also as investigators, especially my team at Send Crypto, I make sure that our engineers and product developers understand why compliance is important, why investigations is important, what type of platforms we need to have a strong compliance and investigative program to make sure we identify the threats and vulnerabilities and bring people in like Alani B to help us with building that investigative team. So that's what I like to bring to the
Greg, your
table.
thoughts, and then we'll go ahead and shift over to what we can do to prepare as teams and some of their thoughts on that. Go for it, Greg.
Thank you, Lourdes. And Alani, I mean, this is something that keeps me up at night as a technologist. The question I keep asking myself is like, am I building something that'll empower these child abusers, right? Like that's something, and where's the balance between privacy and prevention, right? So, what are some of the? I guess that's where the Nadia is going to go. So what are some of there's a real challenge, right? Like, how do you prevent, um, you know, like where is the data? Is there a database that's easily accessible for us to be able to reference a piece of content, at least from a fingerprint standpoint, and be like, hey, this piece of content is flagged as risky, and or this by multiple people has been reported, we should take it down. Like, how do people, tool developers can comply, right? Especially with something that's really horrible like child pornography and stuff like that.
Yeah, Greg, no, I really appreciate that question. And it's an important one, right? And I loved how you said that there has to be a balance between privacy and prevention, which is why I was so direct in kind of explaining that, like, we're not out just to get people in trouble. Like I like my privacy, and absolutely I want you to have your privacy, and folks that are on your platforms deserve their privacy as well. There are databases. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, again, is that kind of central repository. They are contracted by the Department of Justice to manage the cyber tip line. And so child sex abuse material does run on what we call hash sets. And so a digital photo or video it's almost like a digital fingerprint, and it's this there are a couple different kinds that we use, but we know, like, with more certainty than blood or any other kind of DNA, that if the hash set matches that item, that it is illicit material. And so if you are ever in doubt, like, you can definitely connect with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have partners that, if you guys wanted to have some type of like, okay, what's kind of the shortcut for us to get you these questionable materials so that you can check them and make sure that it's okay. They have that database already, and we're constantly adding to it. So, but again, that comes back to, and again, I love what you talked about, your intention with building the company, right? Like, we want these companies that you guys build to be incredible and amazing, and we want you to achieve your wildest dreams. And I appreciate that for you. Part of that includes, how do I make sure I'm not building something that is empowering a criminal to exploit children? And so at the end of the day, especially someone being in this space, I could stay up 24 hours a day just constantly working because kids are always being abused. But at some point you just have to, this is the best I can do. I'm doing everything possible. I'm working with my compliance folks, my Lourdeses, right? But I also really appreciated the genesis of this whole conversation with Alani Q and us, kind of chatting about, hey, the compliance train is coming, right? And I can tell you that it is. With all the conversations that we've had at the commander level at Headquarters Department of Justice, we're constantly in this cat and mouse game with criminals, but it's going to catch up. And so we just really appreciate your proactivity in that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more than it's coming, I think we have an obligation as an industry to prevent horrible things, right? Like, we don't want to build tools that is going to, end of the day, just empower these like abusers and give them more access, right? That's not okay. I mean, before even the government, I think, comes in and regulates or whatnot, but I think we as an industry have a responsibility to build that as much as the value system we believe in, right? So with Akash, the protocol is a decentralized protocol. So the protocol in itself doesn't have censorship. But the question is, like, how do you prevent bad actors from abusing the system? And the answer is providers, right? Our providers are responsible for the content they host, but they need tools for them to be empowered, right? So I think in a way that we can empower them by giving content moderation tools and have them run the tools and have those, reports be posted online so that the world can see how much abuse is happening in a more transparent manner that we don't get to see from opaque platforms. So I think as a decentralized protocols, we have inherent responsibility and an opportunity, right? Really, to leverage some of these amazing databases that Alani's been talking about and giving to our users, right? And having our users run these checks and having that visibility be posted, and I think bringing more light to the issues is a great opportunity for us. So I'm excited. I'm sure there is regulations coming, but I think but also I think that'll open up minds and technologists like myself to really think what we're doing is it really as bad as they say, or is it not? But let's first implement these tools and find out ourselves, right? So yeah.
Hi, Greg, may I chime in? Alani, may I chime in from a compliance perspective? When it comes to sex trafficking, human trafficking, abuse against children, regulations are here. Yes, there are privacy laws, but I can tell you from a compliance perspective, when we work with our product developers and our engineers, and we work with vendors like Chainalysis and Elliptic and Trulio and all those vendors for transaction monitoring. My job as a chief compliance officer is to ensure that these platforms their risk appetite is compatible with our internal platform. Our API internal and external is compatible. So with risk appetite and compliance, there's high, medium, and low. Especially with IP addresses, any IP address from a compliance perspective that is near a strip club, that is near a shipping port, that is near an airport or a train station, or any known sex offender zip codes, we as compliance officers ensure that our platforms have risk alerts and they're high. And when a user is opening up a wallet with our platform and his or her zip code pings out of one of the zip codes that we flagged as high risk because they're near at a location that has to do with sex trafficking, etc., that IP address is flagged, and we conduct enhanced due diligence before that user can even open and make a deposit on our platform. So yes, from a compliance perspective, we do set up alerts, and we work with internal and external vendors to ensure that our risk appetite is flagged accurately and to ensure that false positives are reduced. So yes, that's a compliance perspective.
Yeah, and I loved actually, Lourdes, what you said earlier about compliance is proactive and investigations is reactive. And y'all, like, we're busy. Like, I don't need any more work, right? And I don't want to come for you. So, if you are maintaining those robust KYC and CDD expectations on the exchanges or your other virtual asset service providers, like, that would mitigate a lot of the issues to begin with, right? And I know, like, compliance is a lot of times seen as this, like, wet noodle, like, wah, wah, like, boring, oh, here comes the compliance person, like, ruining our fun, right? But, like, the Lourdeses of the world are the ones that keep you out of trouble and, like, help me focus on the really big guys that are doing, like, the international, like, organized crime type stuff. So please, like, for, the just preventing it from happening would really be optimal. So KYC and CDD is all I got to say.
Thank you, Alani, for that. Yes, I'd like to just add to that. For those out there, the engineers and product developers, coders, any cyber person, compliance is your friend. We're here. I always give this speech. Compliance is the first line of defense. Once that defense is broken, our platform, your platform, is vulnerable. Then it becomes an investigation. As compliance officers, we don't want an investigation, because when we have to open an investigation for an alleged suspicious activity or an alleged bad actor that's using our platform for alleged nefarious activities, we're worried because now our platform is vulnerable. So yes, compliance, we're your friend. We're not here to make your life miserable or to hinder your progress. Let's all work together. So thank you, Alani, for that.
Thank you, Lourdes and Alani. I think that yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you.
Awesome, guys! It's been great to see the different sides of the expertise that you bring, and it's been a great conversation so far. And it's great to bring everybody together and see each other's point of view, the insight you provide, and it's amazing to see that we have a lot more in common, as is usually the case, than not. Thank you for your recommendations, actually. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, Lourdes. I have a question, but go ahead.
Oh, I want to add one more thing. We're global. Michael Friedman wrote a book years ago, The World is Flat. That's a fact. Great book. I recommend it. I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes because I support Africa and I support European operations. And one thing I've learned as a chief compliance officer, because I'm based in the U.S., I can only do so much sitting here in the United States. So what I did, and I've done in the past, and I'm currently doing, is I hire country managers. And Alani knows this term, boots on the ground. I need people in Africa to tell me what the hell is going on with the central banks there, what is going on with the regulators in Africa, Asia, Middle East, Europe. And yes, the United Kingdom. Thank you, Brexit, for making my life difficult. Anyway, I digress. So that's what I do. So for people out there, yes, I'm in the United States. I'm a chief compliance officer, but hire people boots on the ground, because when I call Nigeria and I get a briefing every Monday, I'm going to expect the country manager in Nigeria to let me know what's the latest and greatest on crypto. What are the central banks are saying in Africa, Nigeria, Kenya. And I also have country managers in Europe and also the United Kingdom. So that's an idea you should implement in your team when it comes to governance framework. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Awesome. Switching over to diversity for a moment here. Diversity is critical to scale and adoption in this space. And looking at Web3 and crypto, how do we encourage diversity and participation in the industry by women and people from all cultures, backgrounds, and walks of life? You've talked about how global the nature of the space is. You two are badass women that are super accomplished, and we don't see enough of them in the industry. How would bringing all these people in, how would that impact the growth and evolution of the industry as a whole?
Lourdes, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you, Alani. I'll be brief because I know we're running out of time. Well, I define diversity as people thinking differently. Okay, people. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a product developer. I'm not a cybersecurity person. I'm not even a coder. I can barely turn my computer on. But let me tell you something. I understand crypto because you don't need to be an engineer or the list that I've added there to understand how crypto moves, how crypto works. My thing is, if you're passionate, you'll learn it. It doesn't matter what your background is. And I've only been in crypto since 2017. And the cyber team reached out to me because I had a financial crimes, combating financial crimes background. We had a great relationship. I said, you teach me crypto, I'm going to teach you how to move money, launder money, and follow money and disrupt money flow. So again, you don't need to be an engineer to be involved in crypto, blockchain, Web3, NFTs, down the list. And you know what? And as a leader for the leaders out there and for potential leaders and future leaders, let people speak. Every meeting I have, if I have a person who is a non-engineer not talking, I'm going to call that person separately on their own line and find out why they didn't ask questions. You don't need to be an engineer to be in this world. We need people like you. I want people in compliance and I want people in investigations who are not engineers because they think differently. No offense to engineers and product developers. You're amazing. I love you. But we need people to think differently. And I don't want you to be a coder. I want you to be an investigator and a compliance officer. Thank you.
Ooh, I love it. Oh. So for me, obviously, I don't come from the crypto space, although I have worked in technology facilitated child sex crimes. And so just coming at it from my law enforcement background, I know you guys can't see me, but I mean, obviously I'm a woman. I'm actually very petite. I'm Latina and I look very young for my age. So people always think I'm like in my early 20s or whatever, but I'm much older than that. And I agree with Lourdes that it's not just diversity in like, ethnicity or whatever, it's diversity of thought, right? But what I have actually found is that diversity is what takes my team to the next level when I let them kind of do their thing, right? So if you have someone coming into your space that's passionate about your mission, but maybe they don't exactly fit in, right? Just giving them the space to kind of like present their gifts to the company and you'll be shocked with the results, right? And I can give tons of examples over my career where that's happened. So like, we've had the most introverted intelligence analysts ever. Like, I mean, people that I'm just like, does this person understand the words that are coming out of my mouth sometimes because they're just so quiet, right? But they've created the most brilliant products that have busted spies and child sex abusers and terrorists. Like, I mean, 15 years after my headquarters Quantico experience, I still run into agents that are like, oh my gosh, you guys created that product and it broke this case wide open and we're so grateful. And I literally don't remember working that case with them because we just had so many cases, right? Or mathematicians that can actually create algorithms to protect kids and identify where child sex abuse material is stored and distributed from. Like, I never would have thought mathematicians could contribute to that mission, but they do. For my part, you guys heard that I'm now consulting. And the reason for that is because I loved being an agent. I love busting bad guys. I love protecting the vulnerable and seeking justice. But where my gift lies is in the collaboration and pulling out people's gifts so that as a team, collectively, when you're doing that, you get the best results. And so I ran I created and ran Hawaii's anti-child exploitation operation. So all those stats that you heard came from there over the last 4 years. And when people ask me about the success, I tell them, I'm like, oh, it's because of the love. And I mean, you don't say that in law enforcement, right? So people are looking at me like I'm crazy. But the truth is that for me, my gift is demanding the love from each participant in the op and asking them what that looks like and helping them identify because everybody actually has their secret thing that are like, I really think if we employed this tactic, it would work exceptionally well, but they don't have the courage to do that, right? And so I bring that out of people. And so that's very unusual to hear in law enforcement spaces, but it's also unusual to hear of a 96% conviction rate. That's unheard of. But I don't play around with my cases. I want the bad guy to go to jail and I want that case to be rock solid. And that's my gift. And so that's why diversity is so important, is because that diversity of thought and background, like you just never know what's going to come out of it.
Hey, Alani, can I add to that? Just one last thing. Oh, for those out there in the audience, guess what? I never worked in a bank. So when I left CIA in 2018, I kept getting every door shut in my face because they're like, She never worked at a bank. I'm also Puerto Rican from New York. I'm 5'2". Yes, I'm petite, just like Alani, but we are badass. And every door that was slammed in my face. So finally, I found a startup that's like, wow, you have an amazing background. I'm like, I never worked at a bank, but I can tell you, I can target a banker. I know how they think. I know how they move money. I know how they launder money. And I know how they hide money and create offshore accounts. So give me the job. And they did. So again, for those out there who are interested in being in the crypto sphere as a compliance officer or a financial crimes investigator, you don't have to worry about not ever working in a bank. If you have interest, we can teach you. And last thing I like to say, I always tell my audience, if you ever written a check or know what a check looks like, you can understand crypto. I promise you. Thank you.
That is so encouraging, guys. Thank you so much for that on so many levels. And for me on a personal level, petite Latina over here, I've been super excited for this conversation for many, many reasons, but that is my one personal reason.
Definitely.
And yeah, thank you guys so much for your insights. Since we are running a little bit low on time, Greg, what do you think if we open it up to an AMA in case anybody here has questions for our guests or for you? We can also let our guests go. We know that they're super busy. We have some questions from Telegram that are a little bit more tokenomics and Cosmos related. We could also do that.
I know I have so many questions. I don't think we have time, but like I really like anyway, but I think we should come back. I mean, we should bring back Alani and Lourdes for a much longer session. I mean, I have lots of questions in like, well, we have the compliance stuff too, but also like just in general diversity, right? Like, the real challenges here I hate to use the word pipeline problem, like, oh, there's not enough applicants that are diverse enough, but I think we're looking at the wrong way, right? Like, um, how do we encourage more people to look at crypto, Web3? We obviously can create more roles, but they're also and like, why is there such a big difference in like just pure engineering talent in the United States versus other countries? Like, I come from India, right? Like in India, if you go to a tech company, there's at least a good 50% like like male to female ratio, right? The US is significantly lower, and there's that problem. It's clearly, and then there's this like diversity in terms of roles, right? Like in companies. So it's a longer conversation. I think we can have a whole different spaces on that. But in the interest of time, I'm going to um, let the AMA.
Yeah, so Huey, we see you on there. Lourdes and Alani, if you have a moment, Huey is a member of our team, super dynamic member. I'd love to hear his question if you guys have a moment.
Of course.
Huey,
Absolutely.
go for it.
Hi, Lourdes and Alani. First, thank you so much for being on here. It was awesome hearing what you guys had to say. I'm actually an Air Force. I just got out in December, so
well done, sir. Well done.
Familiar with a lot of the stuff you guys are talking about, and it's nice to be working in crypto and have some other friendlies in the space. My question to you is kind of to both of you on the investigations and compliance side. Anytime there's a permissionless system, right, it is that, right? You can't really stop someone from using it. So, from a investigation and compliance side, from my eyes, I see, targeting it as upstream as possible. And what I mean by that is, like the fiat on ramps, when you go to Coinbase and, they have the KYC on you, or, things like that. Are you guys, like it's difficult for projects that have a permissionless protocol to, track all those things because, it is permissionless. So how do you, it's almost like putting the burden on folks when they have no ability to do it. So can you just go into like your guys' approach a little bit? Because I see catching the bad guys upstream as the best way, but I am naive. So, yeah.
Alani, do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Huey. Thank you for the question. Love the name, by the way. Well, I recommend both. I recommend permission and permissionless platforms, distributed ledger technology with smart contracts. Both have to be compatible because both have different uses. And depending on the mission of your company, both, I recommend building both, having both, definitely. Like Send Crypto and other, where I am now, in other entities and startups, I'm all for custodial and non-custodial wallets. Have both. Have both options always, because both options will always benefit you in some way, whether it's compliance or investigations.
I have a different take. I mean, as
Yes, go ahead.
Hugh's answer question. Custodial, non-custodial is always an on and off ramp. There's always an entry and exit point, right? I think that's our opportunity. Like from an Akash standpoint, someone hosting a workload, like a provider, should be able to know, who they're serving, right? Like that's it's like, hey, I have a store, I need to know who's coming to my store, right? Like, and I have an inherent responsibility to keep my store clean. So like, well, that's an opportunity for me to like actually like choose who I serve or not. So if something really bad is happening, I don't want to serve, and I have to comply in the jurisdiction that I have to comply in, right? Or else I have an IP address and people come and knock on my door. I don't want that to happen. So I think crypto makes it a lot simpler to track. I think Lourdes here and Alani agrees with me as investigators and compliance. Crypto actually makes it easier to track crime and shut down than an opaque system that we had before of like systems, that unless being reported, there's really no central database you can go and refer to, right? So um, and I like, well, how do you use Akash? Well, so if you have AKT tokens, how do you get those AKT tokens? Obviously, you got them through, I don't know, through exchanging Bitcoin or Ethereum. Like, how did you get that Bitcoin Ethereum? So I think you can, if you have the systems, the entry and exit points, you can cover most of, I would say like 99% use cases. And then for the ones that are the 1% of them, you can cover using the client platforms, I call it, right? The hosting providers. And of course, then you have like non-custodial stuff. It's easy to track. The non-custodial stuff, I think it really comes down to the content hosters.
Well said, Greg.
I don't have anything else to really add. Obviously, it's more of a compliance question, but I do appreciate, obviously, that you do want to get ahead of it, Huey, right? And so that's where, again, with that cat and mouse game, having these conversations, thinking through what that might look like, working with investigators or program managers at the federal level, right? All these NCMEC types of conversations. That's where the solution comes to, is we all bring our little piece of the pie and we find that solution. And that's how we stay ahead of the crime. So thank you for having that heart to do that.
Of course. A little my solution is on the on-ramps. When you send out a token to anyone, you send an NFT that it says you're KYC'd, and then that way we can see wallets that are KYC'd wallets. So just a thought.
I love that.
KYC and KYB.
Yeah.
Always.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like that notification alone would prevent a ton of crime, guaranteed, right? Because if they know that, oh, someone's tracking this stuff on some level, like people are less willing to engage in that activity, which is why every talk I'm always letting people know, hey, I know that, statistically there are people on this call that like to abuse kids. Well, I'm coming for you. Right. So no, absolutely. Being proactive and making those notifications is amazing.
Absolutely, Alani. And that's why with compliance, we have risk alerts. And our job is to continually monitor activity as, behavior, whether their behavior matches their profile, and transaction activity.
Amazing. This has been such a wonderful conversation and such a pleasure to facilitate and be a part of. Thank you, guys. Are there any other questions from anybody that is sitting in the room right now? This is your last chance to get a question in for Lourdes and Alani. Greg, of course, if you have any other questions for our amazing guests, by all means. All right. Well, with that, Greg, do you have any closing thoughts? Oh, Greg, I think you're... somebody said hello. All right. Greg, any closing thoughts before we say goodbye? All right. Well, with that, thank you so much to Greg, to Lourdes, and Alani for joining us on Spaces today. And a huge thank you to all of you guys for joining. Oh, yeah. We knew you were trying to get on there. Go for it, Greg.
My headphones are giving. I mean, there was somebody that asked a question about giving guidance on like revenue stream for Akash for the next 5 years or something like that. Do you remember the question, Nadia?
I've got, yeah, we've got a couple questions from, let's see. We've got a couple questions on Twitter and from Telegram, which we could get to. Lourdes and Alani, we know that you guys are incredibly busy. If you need to jump off, do you guys need to jump off the call? The other questions are a little bit more specific to the Cosmos blockchain and tokenomics and things related to Akash. So we understand if you do need to go, and would love to let you go if that's the case.
I do have to go, but thank you guys so much for having me. This was incredible, and I look forward to future conversations. And thank you, Greg and Alani K and Akash, for everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you, Alani.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Like Alani, I have to jump off as well. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation. I look forward to the next event. Have a good one.
We're so
Awesome.
excited
Thanks,
to have
Lourdes.
you guys again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Greg, yeah, we do have a couple of questions. So if you have time, we have one here.
I mean, I think I remember it. So it was like asking for guidance on like the revenue for next 3 years. It's really hard to predict, right? Like, so we can't. I mean, so the way these systems work generally, right, is the numbers that we have really doesn't matter. I mean, we have some applications, the number of applications. What matters right now is the type of applications, right? Because it's not about having hundreds and thousands of applications on day one you're suddenly successful. It's quite the opposite. It's having those 1, 2, 3 key applications that will bring hundreds of millions of users. That's how it is. For if you look at Amazon's growth, it was not a lot of applications on Amazon in the first few years. It was a Netflix that changed the face of Amazon, right? Why Netflix? Because, well, Netflix saw what Amazon could offer and totally leverage the infrastructure Amazon could offer, right? That was only available on Amazon, right? So we shouldn't focus on revenue numbers right now, because these numbers don't really matter, but it's that use cases. Like, hey, what do you do when you have 1,000 providers in 1,000 regions that can deliver a latency signature of less than 20 milliseconds anywhere in the world? The kind of applications, the kind of games that gets built, that's the kind of stuff, right? So we focus on stories, we focus on adoption, we focus on individual projects, we focus on projects like DoD hackathons, like, hey, Akash doesn't have a team, a government team that's sitting in Virginia and going to talk to these DoD offices, but it's the grassroots efforts from our community members that got us into DoD. So things of that nature, what matters right now, and it's what's going to matter over the next 12 months at least, right? So your measurement of success is not numbers, it's qualitative and not quantitative. So it's very important to observe. So in that frame, like, I can't predictably tell you like what our revenue is going to be 3 years from now, because I don't know. It could be, twice or thrice, or it could be 100 times, right? I just don't know. And we shouldn't be focused on those metrics right now.
And then we also have a question from San Holo only. They only had a few minutes to join in today, and they wanted to get their question in and are hoping it'll be in the recording. They ask, do you have a strategy to protect Akash against a DAO takeover by whales? For example, Circle, for example, could have an immense interest becoming the biggest validator and also the means to do it.
Well, we're not going to, in order for them to take over, they need to acquire all tokens, right? I don't think that's practically possible because, I'm not selling my tokens. I'm pretty sure company and our team members will not sell the tokens. I'm pretty sure if I go on Twitter and be like, hey, there's a hostile takeover by someone that's going to crash your token, people won't sell the token. So it's a fallacy at best.
And then we had on Telegram, somebody was thinking it would be great to hear Greg's opinion on Prop 78 for Cosmos. Looks like there's big drama there with 20% of atom supply coming to the market.
I haven't reviewed in detail what the prop is, but if I have to think about, is that the prop that, if it's a prop that is going to support development teams, I think it's a good move. Where is the supply coming? It's not about just numbers dropping in the market, but also where the supply is going to. So I'm not familiar with actual Prop 78 deeply. I've been hyper focused on delivering Mainnet 4 over the last week, so if I missed out on it, but but I've seen proposals where the increased number of Atom is actually going to development teams to support Atom development. If that's the case, I support that. If it is going to some other purpose, I probably won't support it.
And then, Greg, if you want to share your thoughts, speaking of regulation, to just bring it all back to that, this week Web3 Working Group quote tweeted you, and one of the things that they focus on is educating regulators on Web3. You sit on their board, and education is important work. And we just had a whole, vibrant talk around regulation and regulators. Can you tell us about either the work that they're doing or the work that you do with them and how you got involved?
Yeah, so we should be making a bigger announcement about this group. But really, the genesis of the group was there is quite a lot of work happening in Web3. Web3 is shaping up to be like the internet, right? So internet, you have different kinds of applications that offer different things. Like Uber is different from Facebook, which is different from Google and Gmail, which is different from your banks, right? So there's so many applications on internet. And when you talk about regulation, you have to take into account all these different use cases, right? So similarly, in Web3, you have the NFTs, you have the DeFi's, you have the infrastructure that very few people talk about, right? Most of the attention is all DeFi. To be honest with you, I'm an engineer. Finance bores the hell out of me. I know software. I don't care. DeFi is cool, but that's not something that I wake up to and be like, hey, how much can I give extra interest to somebody? That's not my mission in life. My mission in life is to create a more equitable computing platform. My mission in life to create a more greener planet. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to focus on is infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't get the attention, for a good thing or a bad thing, right? Good thing is but it's more like grassroots, and it only attracts really good people that kind of see the future and they understand, they share the values. The bad thing is when you talk about regulators, they're going to regulate infrastructure like NFTs, right? So we want to prevent that. So all our infrastructure protocols, Graph Protocol, LivePeer, RV, us, and a bunch of others came together and said, like, hey, we got to do something about it. We're going to start with educating the regulators first and legislators, right? So when you're writing laws, make sure you keep us in mind. Don't regulate us like DeFi regulation, right? So in that effort, we created something called the Web3 Working Group. It's well-funded. It's well-staffed. It is on a mission to educate the law enforcement and the regulators and legislators to take into account. And we're going to be responsible, right? We're not going to be like today's conversation, we talked about the real bad things people are doing using the platforms. And I don't want to wake up wake up knowing that, hey, my Akash is being used by a child pornographer. Like, that's horrible, right? Like, so there's real problems I think we got to really address, and we got to be proactive on addressing these problems, right? And also, like, hey, this is the whole notion of like crypto. Most of the stuff is illicit. That's also absolutely false, right? We see on-chain data. Like, okay, look at the infrastructure systems. People don't use us for like, right now, there's no evidence that people are using Akash for illicit purposes. So we got to educate the regulators about this new category that's under sort of like exposed to and formulate like regulations and laws around it.
Awesome. I love that. We have a few more questions on Telegram. One of them, they'd love to hear you elaborate on how the U.S. Department of Defense leveraged the Akash network and more about the hackathon. Luckily, we have an entire episode covering that next week, so we'll wait till next week for that one. And then we had a question. Someone wanted an update on the progress and status of the Buy23 ecosystem partnership with Akash. If
I'm sorry, what?
there are any thoughts on that? The partnership with Buy23, yeah, the ecosystem partnership with Akash. And there may be no updates at the moment.
I actually don't know what that is. Is that a validator?
So we'll get back to that. They joined our ecosystem a few months back, so we'll follow back up with them on that.
Oh, I mean, if it's a validator, I mean, if it's on the ecosystem, it'll be on the ecosystem, right? So you should, every ecosystem project is not a partnership, it's ecosystem, right? It's not a partnership is something that our teams work together to achieve a common goal. Ecosystem is tools, that use Akash. If Buy23 is on it, there should be some sort of like indication as to why it's on it. I don't have a computer in front of me to answer the question, but I believe Buy23 is a validator, right? So
yeah, proof of stake validator, yeah.
So they're using Akash. They're using Akash for several reasons, and I don't think there's updates on like how people use Akash from individual users.
Yeah. So yeah, so we have we had a bunch of questions in from Telegram today. Greg, I know you're super busy, so we can go ahead and save these questions for next week and make sure we get them in next week. It's up to you.
Let's do it next week. I think we're way
over. Yeah, we are quite over. All right. So with that, thanks so much to Greg, Lourdes, and Alani for joining us on Spaces today. A huge thank you to all of you guys for joining today or listening to this later. We value your questions, and Greg was able to stay a little bit over to answer some of them, so we appreciate that. Thank you, Greg, so much for doing that. Guys, if you sent in your questions, don't worry, we will save them for next week. We will not forget to. We'll still get those in. Guys, with that, let's keep in touch between spaces. Right now, go sign up for our newsletter at akashnetwork.substack.com. In the About page, Zach's got a link to the blog. Check out the latest post from Anil Murthy, head of product, the first in a blog series on building the open cloud, and look out for the second post coming soon. We'll also keep you guys posted on when we'll bring back Lourdes and Alani Bankhead. It was an amazing conversation, and it was great to bring everybody to the table. That's super important for the space, and it's going to move the space forward. We're also excited to announce Mainnet 4. Look out for content surrounding Mainnet 4 in the next few weeks. Right now, share that pin tweet here in the Spaces room with the 4 features in Mainnet 4. And don't forget to head over to Telegram tomorrow, Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 12 UTC, where Forbull will join us for an AMA with a 300 AKT prize pool for the best questions. Join us next week, Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, for our next Akash Weekly Spaces with Greg. Tap that set reminder button as soon as we post it. Thank you so much again for joining today's event, and thanks again to Greg, Lourdes, and Alani for spending their time with us. See you guys next Wednesday with Greg at 8 a.m.